Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week we trade you stories and you trade us little digital signatures that say that you're listening. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we're here to tell you a story. New week, new story. How's everybody feeling?
Great.
Pretty good.
Excellent. What story elements did you guys have this week?
Of history.
I have something based on a book you're reading.
And I have beginning scene. So who wants to hear what first?
Well, it'd be a lot. Whoever goes first kind of has the easiest time of it because we're all kind of overlapping each other.
I'll go first with the beginning scene.
I'd say beginning scene. I know what I have would be something that can be just added in. There's nothing building. And I think with beginning scene, it's always nice to hear like a...
Yeah, absolutely. So the
Getting
scene
right into
begins with a group of people making their way up a mountain to sort of a high plateau. They're sort of well prepared, like they're wearing warm clothes, but they're kind of at journey's end. And all of the Sherpas, all the people sort of carrying their baggages and being their guides and stuff, all sort of treat the area like holy ground a bit. Like they won't stay up here when it gets dark. Like they want to leave immediately. And there's one sort of primary character. He's kind of nameless, but he very quickly you get the idea that he is the one that they're all sort of working for or working with. He's the one they're trying to get to the top of the mountain. They get him to the top of the mountain, and the Sherpas leave, and they tell him, don't stay too long, good luck, stuff like that. Then this guy sort of takes off his coat and his overcoat and takes out of his luggage like armor and starts like strapping armor on, and he has like a giant crazy sword, and he's like a skilled fighter who's gonna go fight something. And he straps the sword to his back, and he has to make the last kind of climb up the mountain, and he climbs and he almost falls, but he makes it. He gets to like a top plateau, sort of a flat plain. It's kind of surrounded on all sides by mountain, but this flat plain is clearly worked stone, and there's glyphs and writing and stuff on it. It's about, I would say about 200 feet across, but it's round, circular. And he kind of comes up one side, and in the center is like a raised mound, probably 20 or so feet in the air, and there's just like, you can see kind of like he sees like a thin wisp of smoke coming out of the middle, and he walks up to this mound, which turns out to be sort of a crude stone hut. And out of the crude stone hut comes another man who is also similarly dressed in battle paraphernalia. And the challenger lifts his sword and makes a declaration of victory, and the challenged, the man who lived on the mountain already, sort of says like, we'll see if you have what it takes. And as soon as the challenged draws his sword, a thin, long sword that looks sort of impossibly large, all around the mountainside, probably a couple of miles away, all the mountains begin to kind of move, and out of the mountains come these gigantic, sort of 200-300 foot tall giants. They appear to be stone, but there's bits on them that glitter in the sun, in the setting sun, like gold ornaments, 30-40 foot long chains, jewels, diamonds the size of a house, and they all kind of break loose of their sort of mountain stowing apparatus. And at first, the challenger kind of looks at them and is like shocked, and the challenge says, "Do you know the rules? You must beat me before they arrive, or else they will kill us both." And with that, he sort of dives forward. That's the beginning scene.
That's really cool.
Cool.
Yeah. So what's your guys' ideas?
Okay, so should I throw out history?
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
Okay. Well, first of all, the world, not Earth. It's a as they would say in Star Trek, a Class M planet. It's a planet that can support life. Liquid water. It orbits around a star, and the axis of the planet shifts, so there's seasonal realities that take place. a darker season where it's colder and a lighter season where it's warmer.
Right.
This world is about 50% land. So it's like the largest there's 4 main continents. The largest continent is like the South Pole. And it's massive, but mostly covered in ice.
Okay.
And then the second largest planet is almost entirely north of the equator. The top parts of this continent are icebound. There's a more central, the third biggest continent is like kind of a more central in the midst of the main ocean that you can circumnavigate the globe. There's no, there are areas that are cut off by ice during parts of the year, but there is no need of a Northwest Passage, put it that way. But the majority of the people live on the very north coast of this third continent, which is mostly equatorial, but the northern portion borders like a smaller sea, a narrower part of the ocean that is got a couple of narrow necks,
Right.
making it. And then the fourth largest continent is the one directly across. So you think in terms of, it kind of looks like a Mediterranean sort of situation that civilization would naturally kind of form around. And there's not much in the way of written history, just some things that people have scratched on rocks, chiseled into rocks, but there's no historical record that's been written down. In fact, reliable paper has been only in use for 100 years, and they are very, very, there is a society, there's a very powerful guild of the bards that have carried messages, kept alive the oral traditions, but what is known as history is mainly what the storytellers tell. And society is mainly feudal. Strong men rise up and they have holdings and they have groups of people work together. The equatorial are just massively unstable, volcanic and seismic, earthquakes and stuff, uninhabitable. So the society that exists in this northern, the more northern hemisphere, so to speak, are really ignorant of whatever society might be going on in the southern hemisphere.
Okay.
So if they're, but they have a legend that there was a time of a society with wonders and advancements with knowledge that has been lost. And there's something about this solar system. There's an erratic planet that with an erratic orbit that comes near every 40 years or so and just causes just earthquakes and tidal waves and just seismic chaos. So there's been some limitation as far as exploitation of the resources in the more equatorial belt of this. Most of this activity takes place in the equatorial belt of this planet, and so that's kind of there hasn't been. There's piracy. There's a maritime tradition, but sail power. No. How do I put this? It's a pre-industrial society. Edged weapons, armor, feudal societal arrangements.
Cool.
And there's a tendency. Well, it's harsh conditions. So it's like getting the places where it's safe to live without your house coming down on your ears is got, by definition, a short growing season. So you got to get the work done to prepare for the long winter. And it's a kind of a thing. Campaigning, for example, takes place during those times. But a lot of the seafarers, they brave the warmer seas, even though they're faced with terrible storms and tidal waves and volcanoes. So
right.
Cool. But anyway, I'm glad that what I had come up with for my history fits great with your story.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
Having a slight idea here to build off of Reed's, but I'll give my official element first, and then I can interject the other thing.
Okay.
So
I just wanted to throw out one thing that I forgot to mention. This planet has a 400 a cycle, an annual cycle of about 400 days, and people generally, except for accidents and whatnot, and the ravages of dealing with the harsh climate and some of those kinds of things, it's not uncommon for people to live 100 of these cycles. So that we're talking about a people that, maybe a little bit longer live than we think of as people on Earth, but
Yeah.
less disease.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Okay, so something based on a book I'm reading, I'm going to tack back to the Dark Tower, being that I am still reading it, waiting on Songs of Susanna here. But the idea that I'll introduce from that is the doorways.
Okay.
So like the idea of like doorways that will bring you somewhere else, right? To either a different kind of time, a different time in time, maybe just somewhere else in the same timeline,
Yeah.
right? But then also kind of like a twist on that. So you're going to have a lot of these are then kept by gatekeepers or doorkeepers. And so they, I think of it too, like, I can't remember which one it is, but the character he brings over, Father, what's his name? Callahan. Where his little bit where he was, the secret byways.
Right.
Right. Kind of like that idea. So there's, some people maybe that are in on it and maybe use it for, certain travel. And maybe there's some people that's just kind of what they do, keep hopping back and forth between, slight altered ideas of timelines and the reality of different things, as they kind of walk through, and kind of venture back and forth through these different doorways, which again are, watched over, opened by, I don't know what the word I used earlier was, but the
keepers,
the doorkeepers.
So these things like well accepted? Because in the Dark Tower, there was like the Manny who knew about them and would use them, but people didn't really trust the Manny.
I would say it's more like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like, everyone knows about the doors, but there's like, probably fringe groups that talk about, seeing another world or having walked streets that were, of a different time, of an era that, either was or is to come, or, and then they might be just like, I don't know, maybe like the Manny, just kind of like those crazies that, oh, they must have had a bad, mushroom trip or something like that. But then, I would say are people who take it seriously enough and either, gain access to using these. And I would say some of like where they open up to depends on would be dependent on the doorkeeper.
Yeah, I had this kind of idea as you were talking about it. Kids will say like the word for the doors means kind of like shortcut or path through or something like that. And kids and adults and people will call it things like essentially like take that door through the woods. The secret door. And it's a
over
specific,
the river and through the door to grandmother's house we go.
Yeah, it's like a specific word that they use that's the same as the doors because it's like such a part of kind of people's subconscious mind. It's like there's, whatever they call the door,
It's like speak friend and enter.
Well, it's like the way through the woods in your childhood home.
Yeah.
And if your mom wanted you to get something from the next house over, she would tell you, "Hey, go through the passage." If it's called the passage or if it's called the
the way to
the way.
the neighbor's house.
And that means the shortcut, and there's like all, traders and stuff and pirates and merchants who sail the seas have their own ways, know?
Right.
It's like my way is very well guarded. You don't tell people how to get around the Strait of Bernayan. You have your way and I'll have my way.
Okay.
And we'll see whose way gets us there. But it's like this idea of it's like ingrained in people because these doors exist. And I have this kind of picture now that you guys are talking about it that like these doors are how this world got populated.
Oh, okay.
Right. So they came through these and because this, it's not Earth.
Right.
But maybe people have been coming into this from Earth from tons of different times.
Yeah.
And so it's like the world is soft here.
Okay.
These are just ideas I have had just from just listening to you guys talk about those things. it's like this yeah, I had an idea for sort of a pseudo magic system style thing, and you guys can tell me if it works or if it sounds like it'd be fun. But my thought process was that it's kind of a Highlander style magic system. It's like you can give something up to someone, right? And it will be your death, right? It means you're about to die. And a lot of people will give up, like a skilled craftsman after he's had a full long life will give up his skill to his chosen successor,
Right.
and he kind of gives that up to them. So you can't take from people, and you can't force someone to give up. So you can't like force a young man to give up his youth to a dying man. So there's a lot of positioning as far as like, kings have to be really careful and rulers have to be really careful to kind of coerce people to like join their ranks. And when it comes time to it, to like give up their skill, because like power can just pass any way, any place, any distance. It's like things, when I was first thinking about it, I was thinking, ooh, that'd be really terrible, because you could just like take from children or from old people. You could just harvest people's youth and people could just be living forever. It's like, well, I don't want it to be so much like taking from them, because we've done a lot of taking things. Like last story, it was a lot of like, with the siphon knife and taking essence. And I don't want to do that. I think because this picture I had at the beginning scene is that there's legends about him, and maybe this is the prophecy, but like this guy at the top of this mountain is every time the contract that you enter into when you come up there to fight him is that if you win before you don't kill him before he dies, he gives up all of the knowledge and all of the skill and all of the power that he has gained,
which hopefully includes how to deal with the giants that are coming.
Right. And then in vice versa, if you lose, then you also give up to him.
Right.
And that's how he is able to he's like, some people call him like the gate, some people call him like the final, some places of the world don't believe he exists. Other places of the world knows he exists because, it's like in the mount, like think of a plateau thousands of feet in the air, thousands of feet up in the mountains, surrounded by mountains. It's kind of hard to get to unless you know the ways.
Right.
And he is, some people believe he's holding back the end of the world. Some people believe that once he dies, that will stop the end of the world. He hasn't turned over. Because once a warrior goes up there, no warrior ever returns. So some people believe that he died long ago. Some people believe that every time a warrior goes up there, he wins. But then he's now has to be the one to protect. No one quite knows what he's protecting or what he's sort of stopping from happening or what he's forcing to happen.
Like nobody comes back to tell the story. It's like the winner takes all, and he becomes whatever the doorkeeper of the central passageway or something.
Yeah, think about like when Hercules, who is it that's holding up the world? Like
Atlas.
Imagine if it was like every couple of years a new Hercules had to come because the old Atlas was about to die, and it's like, okay, he thinks he's going up there for glory, but really he's like, here, hold the earth real quick while I die, and then he dies, and he's like, well, I'm stuck holding the earth now. Until some other poor fool climbs up thinking he's going to come for glory, and I'll be so old and weak that I'll give it to him and then I'll die.
Yeah.
That's what some people believe. Other people believe that he, is sort of like a guard against some terrible evil. There's lots of things.
Mm-hmm.
So I have another idea here that is kind of based on what Reed was saying earlier. And I think this might bring in like an economic system, the way I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
And it has to do a little bit about what you and I were talking about earlier when you're talking about, again, this comes back to a book you're reading, but I'm not reading the book. You read the book. But then we were talking about game, and we were talking like Age of Empires or like a Civ game that would take kind of that concept from...
Yeah.
And I would say what Reed described as like particularly like that equatorial continent.
Yeah.
Makes me think that that would be a perfect like way. Not that it has to be like a direct copy of what Brandon Sanderson was doing, but is that who was?
Yeah, it's the Stormlight Archives. Yeah.
Right. Okay. But like that concept, but more of just like a basic economic concept, right? Where so you have all these volcanoes, right? So the ground's going to be pretty fertile,
Right.
Or it's going to unearth riches or things, but it's going to be a dangerous thing to access, right? And so if this comes generally every 40 years, all these people, when it comes, they might be far enough away from it, but they're still at a risk of, being in danger, right? And where they live, it's a short growing season. They have to do what they can to kind of boost up for the next time that this major thing will happen, right? And so they'll go out, right? So you have all like these different feudal lords, and it's not like they're all fighting each other, but kind of like we were talking about for the game, where like the different people would be, they're not against each other, but they're not necessarily for each other. They're all
still competing for resources.
Right.
Competing for resources, but also having to like choose whether or not to fight each other, because that means that they're wasting the small amount of resource and time that they have to gather any of this, right? And then you'd have like the pirates or different like, hordes of people that just like, okay, all these people are going for it. Well, if we sweep in and we can just like take what they've developed and then we can get back out to sea, right? And so I would say it's almost like that every few years, where they kind of like build up their castle, their base, put away for like that couple years where everything's in terribleness. And then when they feel, and they have to like judge whether or not it's safe enough after, the earthquakes have stopped or the volcanoes have stopped, and now the ground will be fertile. So it's not like it's right away. They have to wait long enough so that, the volcanoes have settled down, it's re-given the nutrients, and then go out and try to like pick out a plot that they can like do some farming, almost like and hope they can get some good crop in without, the pirates coming in or a different faction, pushing them out, and kind of going, okay, here's this resource that was unearthed from this earthquake. We can mine it and get back to our base real quick. And so then they take like that 5, maybe 10-year window as they kind of venture in, try to find what they can real quick and get back to the coast.
Right.
I don't know. That's kind of what came to mind from what we were talking about earlier.
Right.
And then the way I thought that would be, not that it's like a soul stone or whatever it is in the Brandon Sanderson thing.
Yeah, gem heart.
It's just resources in general, right?
Absolutely.
It just seems like a fitting way to have that. But
yeah, it makes sense that this story could take place while like during the opening up series. During the opening up season. It's like things have started to open up, and so there's all of these I say adventurers, but there's all these not venture capitalists, but like people looking to make a name for themselves, or people looking to make economic advancement, sort of leaving the coasts or leaving the safe places and traveling to this place to set up, because the sooner that you can get in, the sooner that you can start getting information. I like this idea, and my brain is telling me that our hero, if someone gets hero, we can change it, but there needs to be a map maker. Right?
Ooh, cool.
Because like the whole ground has changed. There's been earthquakes and it's like whoever can provide the most accurate maps, the farthest in, maybe a map maker, like a surveyor, and maybe like a surveyor / geologist.
Yeah.
Who's like getting in before everyone else, or, selling his skill for and people are going to pay him to get in and then basically break out and get as far inland as possible, because if you can find and stake the claims that you need to, you'll see the most return, So hero or not, that'd be an interesting person to have,
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that magic system? Should we maybe try for something else, or is that? I was just thinking about that when I was thinking about the beginning scene, because of this idea that like you will, this challenger will come to replace me, and if he's going to fight me to replace me, he needs to kind of get all the information that I have.
Yes.
But I don't want to create another situation that's too similar to the last story, where it's like giving and taking of power and essences and stuff like that.
I was thinking more of like you having the power to bestow the blessing, or you could call it, maybe come up with another word, but it was like, this is something that typically a father will bestow upon his, son, or
Right.
but it could be, to a companion collaborator that has earned your loyalty, or it could be a number of different things, but it having that power of you live a life and you build into it, like I'm calling them legacy points, but it's like establishing your identity as an individual life that has this knowledge and memories. And if you were the seventh son and the seventh son, you'd have a knack.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff that you can pass on.
Yeah.
I think about Elisha. I want a double portion, and he puts on the mantle, right? And it literally, he strikes the mantle into the Jordan River and it just parts and he can walk across on dry land,
Yeah, I was also thinking that like you would meet people in like high courts,
Yeah.
who were like skilled at many things,
Right.
But the problem is that even if the person that passes their skill on to you loved you and was your father and was passing on his skill at the end of his life, his skill was still set to his muscles and his finger size and stuff.
Yeah.
Right? You don't have the perfectly learned skill. So in fact, even though you can pass this on, the skill that is truly honored, the skill that is truly revered is the skill that is learned yourself.
Right.
So like there's these lords in court who can, throw knives, or who can duel, or who can read many languages, or who have all these quote unquote skills. But then at some point in the story, it's shown how they have just gathered these like so many trinkets, and they think that it makes them very accomplished, but in fact it hasn't. I just had this crazy idea. There's an order of monks, right, who intentionally learn skills the wrong way, right? They learn skills the wrong way with the intention of entering into the service of people who they view are less than what's the opposite of reprehensible?
Righteous.
Yeah, in order to pass inefficient skills onto them.
Wow.
Right? So they learn how to duel, except they learn how to duel by leaving a giant opening. And then they pass this skill on to this lordling who, just paid, 10,000 gold shebens to learn master, and he learns, and it just leaves his chest wide open. And they do this intentionally. And it's like, are they killing themselves? Well, kind of. But it's their mission to basically infiltrate and pass on inefficient skills to people who aren't good enough to learn it themselves.
I think that's like different crafts, they'll have the secret knowledge that is only passed on to the select few, and the others, it's passable, but it's flawed. That's really that could be really funny. I mean, that's really a fun story idea.
Right.
I've never thought of something like that.
Or they learn a language, right? So a guy is chosen, and he decides himself, right? He's not being coerced into it. He decides himself, and he learns a language wrong. And he only learns the swear words and the insults. And then he gets himself into a place that an ambassador needs to learn a language real quick.
Yeah.
So that he sacrifices himself. And then the ambassador, now knowing the language, goes to do the ambassador work and
he wants to honor his counterpart, and he calls him like a low down,
dirty dog,
falabity doobie.
Yeah, exactly.
And then something like that, I don't think they'd have to actually like sacrifice their entire self, but they would forget. It's like they're giving up that skill, right? So if they learned it wrong, they could then like escape and go learn it right, as kind of a joke.
Yeah, I guess
right?
maybe there's like an amount of
knowledge of it, and so now it's like they've forgotten it.
Yeah.
If it's a large amount of stuff, like if it was just a language, well, then they would just have a gap in their memory then of that language.
Yeah.
But if it was like a language and how to fence and how to fish and
or maybe it's like maybe it's like your life's work. Maybe if it's like the all-consuming part of your life, then it's giving up your life. But if it's just something like, what's the quickest way to the, because you you could trade. That could be part of the economy, is the trading of skills and information. It's like, do you want to have a map of this strait, this really terrible part of the ocean? Or do you want me to impart into you the intuitive understanding of the stars as you're making your way through? And it's like data brokers, it's information brokers, which makes our cartographer slash geologist character so much more important, because he's not just drawing a map, he's experiencing the environment, and he can sell that experience to people.
Yeah, especially in the history that I laid out, you'll have individuals that have knowledge that is not universally available. Like I was thinking of like the story of Shogun, where the pilot is he's a prized individual because he knew how to get through Magellan's Pass. This is something that mariners don't. It's not written down. It's secret, and for him to find the secret way to the Japans was like astounding. How did you even do this?
Yeah. Cool. Okay, I kind of like this. I think that we've got a really good setup here. I think this is going to be a good one. I really think this is going to be a good one. Do you guys have anything else you wanted to add to this before we call it a night?
No, I think that's a good place to leave a first thing to get it started off on some interesting stuff.
Great. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us for this episode of Wait, It Gets Better. If you like this episode, please like us on Twitter or Facebook or YouTube. If you want to ask us questions about our process, if you want to hear our thoughts on your story, just send us a message at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com or message us on Twitter at @getsbettercast. We'll see you guys next week.